Hey Andy, what was your first computer?
So I don't remember what the model of it was, but I remember it was like an old IBM PC, and I started probably with it when I was probably 4 or 5 years old, just playing like video games and stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, I always loved to play around with computers and especially Legos too. Always had like a kind of a tinkering mindset growing up.
Lego Technic or just, like Lego City or science fiction stuff?
No, just old school Legos. The Lego Technic stuff was kind of came along after my childhood years. So
Okay.
yeah.
And you played with the IBM PC, and how you started programming. So what was your first Hello World?
So I tried to get into programming a couple of times, like first in elementary school and then early high school, and I could never get it to stick. I think if I would have been growing up in a time where like there's more programming courses available nowadays, I would have done a little better. But I tried and failed several times to get into programming, and it wasn't until I took a programming class my senior year of high school that it actually, started to stick for me. So I got into programming pretty late, actually.
So why you started at all? So
I loved computer games growing up, and I always had the impression that I would just write video games for a living, right? Because that seemed fun. So originally I got into programming because I wanted to write my own video games. But then as I got into it more, I just kind of started to like programming in general. It didn't really matter what I was writing. I enjoyed the process of building it. And it turns out there's a lot better market for making enterprise software than there is for video games.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what games do you like?
I like strategy games. I'm notoriously bad at like the shooter games.
Mm-hmm.
I played World of Warcraft a ton in my high school years, more than I care to mention how many days I put into that game. But that gave me a lot of like soft skills, I guess, like teamwork and leading small groups. So I really liked that experience.
So you don't regret the lost time?
No, I don't regret it at all. I think it was super useful experience.
Yeah, perfect. So this is more or less like teamwork, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have leaders and you have people that you need to work with. Some people are, easy to work with. Some people are, conflict with each other, just like in, the real business.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of figure you were? So I guess in the words of Warcraft, there was like you could choose, a appearance or whatever it's called. So what?
Yeah, I switched around a few times, but I usually played like the bigger characters,
mm-hmm.
like tanks and stuff.
Oh,
because I liked having like all the pressure. I mean, I did sports too growing up, and when I did baseball, I was the pitcher, and when I played hockey, I was the goalie. So I like the high pressure positions. It's exciting for me.
Oh, so you played hockey?
Yeah, just through high school. I'm from Minnesota, so.
Mm-hmm.
There's not too much else to do here in the winter besides like hockey and snowboarding.
Hey, snowboarding as well. So a lot of the boards. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, cool. So this was not only you are not a typical hacker in the basement, so you also enjoy sports.
Yeah, I like to get out and do stuff as well, but I spend plenty of time on the computer. That's for sure.
No mountain biking.
No, I do regular biking, but no mountain biking. No.
Okay, interesting. Because I thought snowboarding.
We don't have a lot of mountains around where I'm from, so I've done it before. I enjoy it, but just don't have the terrain for it.
Okay, so nice. So so you started. So you did the World of Warcraft, and you wanted to create your own game. So you started several times to programming, but it was too hard because there were no examples. So what was your first? What happened then? I mean, so
when my first ever programming project was my first year of college. The professors there were great, and they basically figured out how to hack into a Nintendo WII remote. So it's just like a simple controller with an accelerometer in it.
Wow.
And we would basically, they wrote an API for that. And the students, us, would basically read that accelerometer data, and we made just a simple like fall down game that was controlled by the accelerometer readings. So that was that was really interesting to me, and that's kind of what got me hooked into it.
Mm-hmm. When was it?
That was let's see, that was probably late 2011. And then and that was the project that I pitched in my IBM interview when they said, tell us the project that you've done. I talked about that, and that's how I got started with IBM.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? So I mean,
yeah, I liked it a lot. It was a ton of fun. Worked on it with a few other people. It was a blast.
So if you would like, to be successful at IBM, you have to start, hacking Nintendo sticks first, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, there's a couple ways to do it, but that's definitely one.
Okay, and so this was your college project, and after that, you just started at IBM, and this is the story, or you had something in between?
So I started interning for IBM after my first year of college. I actually started out in the IBM I, or AS400 area. Cool. Did that for a year, and then I switched over in 2013, I switched over to the Webster Liberty team, and I've been with them ever since.
Okay. And you studied in Minnesota as well?
Yep. I was born and raised in Minnesota. I'm in Rochester, so there's an IBM location here, and I happened to grow up here. So, yeah.
Okay. Cool. So you're actually pretty young, right? For 2011, it was a study, so I assume you were 20 something, right?
Yeah, I was 19 years old when I first got into IBM.
Hey, cool. So now you are 25?
I'm 26 now.
Yeah, 26.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, a little bit older than I am. Kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, but this is actually impressive, because what I would like to know is, so you're pretty young. What is your impression of the whole Java EE and the Liberty? I mean, you are a young developer. You could do whatever you like, and you're doing enterprise stuff. I mean, you enjoy it, or is it boring, or what's your impression? So your honest impression. Would you like rather, hack World of Warcraft, or you are happy with OpenLiberty?
So yeah, I really enjoy working with the Liberty team. It's like our internal culture we have is like very special within IBM. Like everyone's very positive. Like we have lots of team players that do things for the good of the organization, both in the development side and like the management side. So we're like just kind of a big family almost within IBM. So it kind of feels like we're our own separate company, and we just kind of have to plug into the rest of IBM up top. But for the most part, I really enjoy it, and I like to do more of the forward-looking, innovative type development with Liberty. So like I worked on Java E8 a lot and Java 11 a lot, and I really enjoyed that. I'm less of a fan of the support side of things, but that's a whole half of what we do is paid software support, so that customers can run in production and sleep well at night.
This is what I notice over and over again, because I don't know whether you know, but J2E or Java EE has not always a good reputation. That is told to be, I don't know, boring and slow. And what I noticed recently is I have to work from time to time, I enjoy to work from time to time with young people and startups and students, and then they don't know the whole background of Java EE. And if I show them the modern Java EE stuff, they are delighted, and this is immediately taken. And in one project was really funny. They asked me, constantly, why the thing is so fast. It's like, funny you ask, because usually I have, people assuming like the enterprise stuff is slow and the overhead is high. And this seems also to be in your case. You have no prior experience, with the real WebSphere. I don't know whether you saw it already. So the WebSphere full or classic, whatever you call, and just with the recent new stuff. And it seems like you're really enjoying this, right?
Yeah, I really enjoy it a lot. And I actually have, so the organization I work in, we handle both WebSphere traditional and WebSphere Liberty. So it's the same engineers, the same, 20 years of experience going into Liberty, even though Liberty itself is only, 5 or 6 years old. Our support staff has, some of them have 20 years doing support for Java EE applications and environments. So I worked on Java EE 7 for WebSphere traditional. So I have some exposure to it, and it's we've definitely come a long way. Just the Java EE ecosystem in general, like how far things have come towards the more lightweight, fast runtimes.
So, what's your impression of Java E8 and MicroProfile? I mean, you see it all the time from both sides. So, I mean,
MicroProfile is another good one to mention. Java EE8 was good. It's been on pause for a while. Just Java EE has been on pause while it's migrating over to Jakarta EE. But I'm really looking forward to what's going to happen in that space after, the floodgates open and we can start iterating in that space again. But in the meantime, MicroProfile has been a great platform to basically do that kind of work, and it'll continue to be a good platform to do those type of things even after Jakarta EE opens back up. So I really enjoy the pace that things are moving at now, like where you have small specs that are just implemented out on GitHub. You have your CI/CD pipelines. You push artifacts to Maven Central, and it just seems like the whole ecosystem just seems like a well-oiled machine at this point. So I'm really happy with where it's at.
Yeah, I'm also really happy right now. I was not so happy 2 years ago because it seems to me like a MicroProfile will become, the alternative to Java EE. And this is nothing wrong with alternatives, but the problem is all my clients had already traditional application servers, and there was no way to introduce something else. But what happened right now, like actually, one of the best use cases is OpenLiberty itself. You can have both. You can activate Java 8 module as well as MicroProfile, and you have both at the same time. And this is what I really appreciate because Java EE moves slower, but is, I would say, pretty complete. It's not like lots of stuff I'm missing in projects. And MicroProfile iterates quickly, so I get the newest stuff on top of the stable stuff. And I think the combination of both is just perfect.
Yeah, definitely. And I think MicroProfile is filling a nice niche where the smaller specs really help out to have more bite-sized technologies. So like you have in Jakarta EE, you have, your JPA, EJB, CDI, like just these absolute mammoth specifications that are practically frameworks in of themselves. Whereas in MicroProfile, you have things like health check or metrics or something that's just it's a simple thing to just sprinkle into your application. And you don't have to rewrite the whole thing. And I think that's one of the key things that's made MicroProfile successful is people can take existing applications and what they already know and just sprinkle in some MicroProfile stuff without having to do a complete rewrite from the ground up. Because that's expensive to do, and you don't want to be doing that, too often.
And also very pragmatic. For instance, in the MicroProfile matrix, they are just referring to Prometheus, labeling and types, which would probably never fly in the traditional Java EE because Prometheus would be considered as I would say not proprietary stuff, but it's not as standardized. And the MicroProfile people are more pragmatic, which is also very good.
Yeah, definitely. I like how MicroProfile is more like Java EE is its own ecosystem and it tries to be self-contained, but MicroProfile is at least aware of the other technologies that are out there, and it kind of helps glue those pieces together. Like one of the things that is being looked at in MicroProfile now is like the service mesh patterns, like with Istio and Kubernetes and things like that. Mm-hmm. So at least acknowledging that people are using these things in production. How can we make programming models that fit into this nicely?
Absolutely. Are the other young people in your team, similar minded as you, that they really enjoy, the enterprise stuff, or you are the old lonely youngster?
No, there's actually quite a few of us in the Liberty team that are I'll say under 30. And yeah, we all do, different types of responsibilities and whatnot. But for the most part, everyone just likes programming, I think. So it doesn't really matter what the end product is. It's more the interaction of like building something, giving it to a customer and having, them like it or ask for more feedback, and, being able to present them with something new that, fixes a need.
Mm-hmm. So now about OpenLiberty. So you are very active. This is actually how I found you on GitHub, and I had a small issue, and it's not an issue at all. So what I noticed is that OpenLiberty is very, how to call it, exact and strict regarding to the specs. So they try, or you try to be to write, very exact, how to call it, implementation of the Java EE standard, and which I'm a little bit loser. So what I try to do is, to have to be more pragmatic about that. And one issue is what I found with one implementation which what I found with OpenLiberty is, if you activate, for instance, the Java E8 specification, OpenLiberty also says, okay, if you would like to have the full Java E8 spec, you will have also to activate SSL, because Corba will probably need SSL. And the problem with SSL is it needs some certificate generation and stuff which I usually don't care about. So most of my Java E8 projects don't use Corba. So, yep. But I understand that with Java E8 is the full spec, so Corba is a part of that. And I dig into the source code in GitHub, because what I wanted to do is to have a Java E8 full specification without Corba and without this SSL certificate generation, to have easier configuration and faster startup. And then I found like your issues or your posts, what comprises a Java EE 8 spec. And this is like, okay, seems like you're really knowledgeable, a nice guy, so let's do a podcast so I can, get some questions answer with you. My first question is, which is a little bit hidden in OpenLiberty, is if I say Java EE 8, I would like to have Java EE 8 support. What OpenLiberty does, this Java EE 8 support, is like a set of dependencies which are loaded then. And the question is where it is configured. What is Java EE 8? So OpenLiberty knows that Java EE 8 is JAX-RS and CDI and everything else, because I see this in the logs. The question is how OpenLiberty knows what Java EE 8 actually is.
So, yeah, that's a good question. So Liberty is basically broken down into lots of different pieces. We call it it's built on an OSGI runtime. So if you've ever worked with OSGI, basically you break down a set of packages into a jar, and that jar has metadata such as like what packages you need to import and what packages you export. So that way you can get static resolution of the class, the classes contained in that OSGI bundle. It's actually very similar to the Java 9 platform module system, but just, OSGI has been around a lot longer, and it's has dynamic capabilities. So it has a lot more, you get a lot more fine-grained control with OSGI. So first of all, OpenLiberty is built on OSGI, and using that, we say, okay, take the servlet feature, for example. The servlet feature has a manifest, and we say, okay, the servlet feature requires these 3 bundles that are required to that contain our servlet container code, and maybe it also requires our TCP transport feature to be enabled. So we have public features, which are the things you put in server XML, and we also have internal features that we use for our own internal categorization for feature dependencies. So a Liberty feature can pull in OSGI bundles, and it can also pull in other Liberty features. So it's basically just this nice little tree that you get, or this graph that you can get, where we build up features, and you can enable either a single feature, or we have what's called convenience features, and that's like your Web Profile 8 or your Java EE 8. And those basically don't have any bundles associated with them. All they are is convenience features that just pull in other features, such as namely, all the various features that comprise Java EE8.
So Java EE8 and WebProfile are convenience features, and they're basically empty jars just with the manifest?
They're just .mf files.
And where are they? Are they just bundled in a big jar?
Yep. They're in, so this is getting into implementation details. I mean, it's all public stuff, but if you go in WLP/lib, that's basically where we put all the implementation details of Liberty in there. So all of our jars, all of our feature manifests. So if you poke around in there, you'll see about 300 jars that comprise the entire runtime. And they're all, appropriately named based on what they do. And then there's also a features folder under that. And that features folder holds all of our manifest files that basically declare what features are and what their, what other features or bundles that they pull in.
Cool. And is there a command line interface, no commands, where I can list all the features, or you know this?
Yeah, I believe there is. I don't know it off the top of my head.
Because I think there should be, if there's OGN kernel, usually they have like command line interfaces. But if you find something, just send me a link and I will put it to the show notes.
Sure.
So what it means to me is I could create my own feature. Like I could create my own, almost Java 8 feature without SSL and Corba.
Right. And Liberty was designed that you can have what we call user features. So they're not official Liberty features, but actually other people, they can be stack products that run on top of Liberty, or they can be end users like yourself, and you can actually define your own feature files, and those can, pull in other features or your own custom bundles that plug into the runtime. That's a pretty advanced thing to do, typically, unless you're trying to add another layer in between the Liberty runtime and like the end user applications. Usually, just simply writing an application is the best way to go.
But to solve my problem, so what I would like to have is Java 8 without the SSL overhead. This is basically my thing, because it affects the startup time of Liberty. I would create a user feature and just copy the existing Java 8 feature and remove whatever I don't like, right?
It's not quite that easy of syntax. So in server XML, you're used to writing in XML, and you just have to deal with the what we call the public short names of features.
Yes.
If you're going to do a manifest, I'm sure you could infer it, but it's not. It's probably not going to be that portable. It'd probably be easier to just have a snippet of server XML that you include in your configuration. We have looked at ways to exclude features from convenience features. We got that request specifically. For example, someone wanted to use Hibernate instead of Eclipse Link, which is the JPA implementation that Liberty ships. So they wanted to enable all of Java EE8, but they wanted to exclude the JPA feature so they could bring Hibernate instead, and not have the extra Eclipse Link.
And is it working with Hibernate? Because there's also interesting information for my client. So could OpenLiberty run with Hibernate instead of Eclipse Link?
Yes, absolutely. We did some work somewhere between 1 and 2 years ago where we made we called it the JPA container feature. And that basically only pulls in our JPA runtime integrations for Liberty, but it's agnostic to the JPA implementation that's used. So you basically can bring your own JPA implementation, and that can hook into even the Liberty Transaction Manager.
Yeah, this is important, exactly, because what I would like to have that the transaction gets propagated until the Hibernate session through JPA.
Yep.
Okay. This is actually great news. So you should write a blog post or something about that, because I think I got already the question whether OpenLiberty can also run on Hibernate, with Hibernate.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to put out a blog on that.
Okay. Back to my SSL problem. What I also try to do is just try to include the all the libraries. So if you include Java 8, what you will see in OpenLiberty in the logs, how this is expanded. So how the convenient feature is expanded, you will see all the dependencies like CDI and JAX-RS.
Yep.
And I played with that, and I try, to add library by library. But at the end of the day, one library pulled the SSL again, and it was slow again. This is the problem I had, and as I gave up, I was like, okay, who cares about one additional second startup time? I had no time anymore, and just what I'm doing right now, just using the Java 8 full and MicroProfile on top of that with the SSL dummy setup, and it works well for me. But which you have a rough idea where the SSL overhead is pulled in? So which library requires the SSL, or which feature requires the SSL?
I don't know that one off the top of my head. I think if you're enabling like app security 2.0 or 3.0, that will pull in
probably
SSL.
Yes.
Basically, if you enable any sort of security-based feature at all, somewhere down the stack, it'll end up pulling in SSL.
Yeah, Erin Schnabel?
Yep. Yeah, she used to be on the Liberty team, so I've worked with her very frequently and still chat with her.
Yeah. So she's extremely knowledgeable, as a true hacker, and I already recorded a podcast with her, I think, last year. And at the very beginning of OpenLiberty, I tested OpenLiberty, and we met at Java 1 back then. And we had the problem that by activating the Java E8 feature, I had to define, I think, first user or SSL store or something like this. And this was also very related because the reasoning was because of IOP over SSL or something. And back then it was not that easy to do that, so it was not obvious. But the funny story was, so I came to the IBM booth, and Erin wanted to chat with me about a demo app or something like this. And I asked her about that, how to do this, and she said, okay, do you have your notebooks? Like, yeah, here is the OpenLiberty configuration. Do you have VI? I say yes, and she's just fired up VI, changed my configuration in a 5 second. It works. Like, thank you very much. I was like, wow, I mean, this is the best booth experience I ever had on conferences. Who are you? And she, I'm just a developer. I was like, okay, this is, and the others are also developers. I was like, okay, this is great. This is amazing. Usually, if you go to the booth, you get no answer. I don't even bother asking any questions. But IBM was completely different.
Yeah, good. Yeah, Erin is awesome. She was one of the original, I think, 5 engineers that kind of started the Liberty project from the proof of concept phase internally. She's one of our 10xers, so meaning she gets done like 10 times as much as everybody else.
Oh,
so she's awesome.
Cool. So now, what do you like to?
So back to the. Just if I can interrupt quick, back to the SSL problem. I saw you put out a video on that for, I think, when we were first betaing Java EE8. And I saw your video on that, and I was like, oh, well, that's kind of bad user experience. So what we do now actually is we automatically generate a key store password, which was the thing that Erin had to do for you in VI. So now that's all automatically generated if you don't specify your own key store password, basically. So nowadays you can just enable Java EE8 and start the server, and there's no special configuration needed to have a clean server startup.
This is pretty cool. And this change was caused by my video on YouTube.
Yeah, I saw your video, and I was like, oh, that's kind of rough user experience. So anytime I see things like that, or anytime anyone else from the team sees things like that, we'll definitely try to polish off the user experience, because we spend a lot of time and effort having the cutting edge programming models like your Java EE8, MicroProfile 2.x. But if it's hard to use, like if the out of the box experience is bad, no one's going to use it.
Yeah.
So I think the user experience is super important, and it's sometimes it's something that the developers of any product can gloss over if they're black belts in that technology already.
Yeah, this is actually awesome. So what I will do, I will more often record something with OpenLiberty, and then we get the next killer application server, I think.
Yeah, there we go.
So you are an IBM, so I will also misuse you for another topic, and this is JMS. You know what it is, right? Java Message Service. You can just send messages back and forth.
Yep, I know it. I know the basics of Java messaging service, but I will add the disclaimer that is probably I'm the least familiar with that technology out of any Java EE specification, I would say.
Yeah, no problem, because there is no technology. It's just set of interfaces which are pretty simple, and there are two concepts. You're writing messages to a queue or to a topic, and this is basically it. And you have two choices: transient or persistent communication. So, and done, right?
Yep.
So, the problem is, of course, you need an implementation of the JMS, because just JMS is like just JDBC. This is just empty stuff.
Yep.
And of course, IBM has MQ series. So I hope you heard about that, right? It runs on AS400, and you heard about MQ series?
Yep, I've heard of MQ. I've never used it firsthand, but I'm definitely aware of it.
So now you get a task from me at IBM internally. So this MQ implements, of course, JMS, and this is very stable and very popular, actually, JMS implementation in enterprises. So I would say most of the large companies already have MQ series running. For unknown reasons, it is widely underappreciated. So what happens frequently to me in projects is like, my clients have MQ series running, and they think that the usage is complicated, or I don't know what they think. And they ask me, what we should use for service-to-service communication. And they ask me about Kafka, and Kafka is great, but this is a completely different use case. So they just would like, to exchange messages between microservices. And and I say, you have MQ series, let's do this. Like, no, it's impossible. It's just way too complicated, and no one knows about that. And what I did several times, I just used the MQ series, and I have to say, you only need some parameters. If you have the parameters, you don't need any external dependency. It is just works out of the box, and you send the message, and you are set. So you just need annotation. I would say one annotations with, I would say, about 5 attributes you have to know, and you can send the messages back and forth. And you can rely on, I would say, probably 30 years of experience with reliable messaging. So if I were IBM, I would push MQ series a little bit more. So this is just the message. So if you know someone from your company, so you should do something about that, because what I don't get that, this is like great technology, and no one tries to integrate that with JMS. And if I show this to my clients, they say, amazing. I mean, this is very simple. So it always was. It's like forgotten technology, right?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that IBM has a lot of very, very stable products like DB2, MQ, ZOS. All those things are super, super stable. They perform well, but they kind of require that almost arcane knowledge in order to use. So definitely that's one thing that we've been working on a lot lately is improving user experience to get that, the out of the box experience better, because there's so many technologies, and you can't rely on students coming out of college already with ZOS experience, for example. So,
but if you would compare,
improve things where we can.
Yeah, but if you would compare, for instance, Kafka configuration with JMS configuration, I would argue JMS is simpler, way simpler, and far more elegant. So this is the crazy stuff, right? So just a message to you: if you can, go to someone with MQ or JMS knowledge and just show how easy can it be. And I have no idea how MQ can be run on Docker or not Docker, or how but I think something could be done to improve visibility of MQ. And this is particularly interesting for clients who already have MQ. And before they use something else, I would stick with JMS, because to you, just JMS is very easy to use. You have a JMS context, it gets injected. So with one liner, you can send a message, and one method on message receives the message. So it's really very easy to use.
Yeah, I'll have to go. Have you? I'm sure you've heard of Alistair Nottingham, right?
Yes.
He's So he's actually started out in, I believe, the JMS area. So that's his area of expertise. So I'll definitely have to go back after this and chat with him about
the
JMS experience. But have you heard?
I will have to invite him to my podcast as well. And I have already some arguments with Nod. I think he's at Nod, right, at Twitter. It's like
something like that.
Yeah,
I think Naughty Code.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And because this is funny, because I'm coming from the project perspective, so I'm not a server vendor, and I have complete different perspective on usability of application servers. So I think we had an argument about server size or something like this, or packaging. And I said, for me, it's the most important thing, small wars, simple POM, no dependency, and ready to go. And his point of view was rather from the optimization server perspective. So we had a longer discussion, and but I will ping him about JMS. So this actually a great discussion. Thank you. So I will do this. Yeah.
Yeah. If you ever want to deep dive on JMS, Alistair is your guy to talk to.
3-hour podcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So one other thing I was going to add on that is I know that in the MicroProfile space, one of the things brewing, I'm not sure how closely you follow MicroProfile, but one of the things brewing right now is a reactive messaging spec for that. So that's another thing that is being looked at, kind of, reinvigorating the messaging space. Doesn't necessarily have to be Kafka or anything. But yeah, so I need to get back and look at the messaging.
Why is you interested in MicroProfile? Because of your work, or just genuinely interested in MicroProfile and you like that?
Sorry, what was that? Did you ask why am I interested in MicroProfile?
Yes, because of your work, or you just, interested in MicroProfile?
Yeah, it's a little of both. So for my day job, we have to, the OpenLiberty runtime supports MicroProfile, and I have a little bit of involvement with some of the MicroProfile specs. But also I see it as, a way to keep, kind of innovating and using new technologies in the Java space, like as a user. So like, for example, one of the projects that I worked on with a small team last year was we built a small microservice based game running on OpenLiberty called Liberty Bikes. And basically what it is, it's 4 Liberty servers running, and it's like a multiplayer web-based Tron game. And we used, Java E8 and MicroProfile, I think 1.3 technologies there. So that was really useful to see how, like from a user perspective, how OpenLiberty gets used, how these technologies actually play out. And I was able to, give a lot of user feedback, back into our own runtimes team and help out.
I found this on your GitHub page. Was called like Liberty Bikes, right? And this is like the black background with like red lines. I just saw these screenshots, and I actually wanted to ask you about that. And this is a microservice-based game, and there are 4 microservices. Like, what are the microservices? Do you remember? So what is like 4 wars communicated with each other, or what is it?
It's just 4 wars. So we have our front end was written in Angular, but we still package that up into a war file that's just running a super tiny OpenLiberty server, so it only has the servlet runtime enabled. So that's a really small footprint there. That's our front end, and then we have another service for single sign-on integration. So it handles like our Google, Twitter, and GitHub single sign-on options. We have a separate microservice that kind of acts as like the front for our player database. So that's where we store player names and their stats and their ranking information. And then we have our 4th microservice, which is the game engine itself. So that's where you actually have, that's the service that actually has the WebSocket connection out to the client. And that was actually turned out to be a really good demo for microservice architectures, is because suppose you had 10,000 people wanting to play Liberty Bikes all at once. You don't have that many people. You have relatively few people utilizing the authentication service or maybe the registration service. But you're going to have a lot of load on that game service that's running the WebSocket and taking care of all the player moves. So you can actually scale out, independently that game service, just one small piece of your application, and have like redundancy there, and not have to pay for, the scale out of your other services that maybe don't have as much load.
Cool. Were you involved in the coding this, or the code?
Yeah. Yep.
So then the question is about scaling. So this is an interesting one, because WebSocket connection. So WebSocket connection is bound to a particular node. So if you have, let's say, if you would start, 5 wars as a pod, the already existing user will have to come back to the same pod again, right?
Correct.
But this is, how you implemented the load balancing is like IP based or whatever. You know what I mean? Because the load balancer, which sits in the front of the pods or Docker containers, whatever you have, it will have to know that you have to return to the already existing pod, right?
Yep. So all of our like messages that get passed, for example, if I want my player to turn left, that message is prefixed with what game ID it's going to, and that game ID can be used to route the message to the appropriate container.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this is the traditional. How traditional is the most simple solution. I got actually exactly the question, the AirHacks TV before the podcast, and someone asked me about scaling and WebSockets, and I said, okay, I didn't mention the load balancing because he explicitly wanted to know about multiple pods, and I say, okay, you will have to replicate the data behind the scenes, because otherwise there is no way to implement this, because WebSockets are stateful.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. And how big the wars are?
They're pretty tiny. I know we don't use our core game services. Like we stuck to Java EE and MicroProfile APIs, so they're all thin wars. Cool. I would guess way less than 1 megabyte a piece. The only exception to that was when we actually had to build JSON web tokens. We had to bring in an extra library so we could actually construct the JSON web tokens, within the services and sign them. But in some architectures, you could even offload that to a separate service. And I think that's, even besides that, there's some discussions in the MicroProfile JWT group going on about maybe standardizing a way to produce JSON web tokens. Don't quote me about that, but I think that would be a great enhancement for the MP JWT spec.
Yeah, not a big deal, because they have to parse the JSON web token anyway. So usually the server will already use a JSON web token library, a parser library. So in this library usually is also able to produce the JSON web token. So this is not like a huge problem to solve, I would say.
Right.
The question is why you had to produce the JSON web tokens, because usually they will come from Angular, and then they could be passed, between the microservices just as they are. So why you had to produce your own JSON web tokens?
Yeah, so we produced our own JSON web tokens for the internal system calls. So when we had, for example, when a game is over and you want the game service to tell the ranking service, increase this person's stats by 1 point. Okay. Basically, we would actually have a JSON web token representing the system identity, and I actually demoed that at a conference last year of how you can secure these backend endpoints, because I used OpenAPI, which is a different MicroProfile spec. It allows you to view your backend REST services and invoke them with a web browser GUI. And I showed how without JSON web tokens, I could just if I found that REST endpoint, I could just boost my player's score. But then when I secured it with JSON Web Token with a system level token, then it wasn't vulnerable anymore. And I know you can solve all that with, not exposing those backend services anyway. But it was just an interesting exercise.
Mm-hmm. So on game over means you had something like a timer service which ran asynchronously. Right?
What was that? You said game over?
Yeah, you said on game over you had to send a token to the other services was the use case. So if the game was over, you had to do something with it. But this was like a timer service or an asynchronous service, right? Because otherwise.
Yeah. So a game round just runs like you have, 1 to 4 people per game round, and a round only lasts for maybe 20 to 30 seconds. But basically, you just run around in this box and you just avoid each other. And if you run into something, then you're out. And the last person who's alive is the winner of that round. And then when a round is over, that's when we send the stat updates. And then you can re-queue and move to the next round.
I never had the problem with JSON Web Token. The reason is different, right? So this is a game. So it means you are doing something, but I mean, your actions on the screen is not like request response. So you're running around and properly via WebSockets, the coordinates are sent to the server and they can cause other events, right? And this is where you have the problem. And right. In my project, it's like, the Angular would send to the server like an order request to a JAX-RS service. Then we have already the token. And if other services are involved, we just send, the token we already have to the other service and we are done. And the only problem we have is if on asynchronous, there is asynchronous jobs or services running like timer services, then you don't have the token. And then usually we ask a service like external service like Keycloak. I don't know whether you have something similar on Liberty. It's like an open source SSO solution. And it can impersonate a timer service. Let's say, okay, this timer service is actually the user and you get a token, like a technical user.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But interesting point was the game. So what you did with the token production, and what I wanted to ask you is OpenLiberty a popular choice? So many clients are using OpenLiberty, as
opposed to. No, just like Webster Liberty, or
no, just in general. So you have this is like popular solution, because I see in my projects OpenLiberty more and more. And is to question, this is like popular choice. So you have lots of clients using OpenLiberty.
I don't. So first of all, I guess I don't know those numbers. I'm a lowly developer. Yeah. I feel like adoption is going at a very healthy rate. The OpenLiberty project just started in, I think, mid 2017. So it's not even been 2 years yet, and we're seeing things move into production now. So that's a good sign, I think.
Yeah. No, it's a very good sign. So this is also my impression, and some of my clients also using OpenLiberty already in production. And I get also questions about OpenLiberty, and some clients do not recognize that now OpenLiberty is completely open source, because at the beginning it was like a half open source. You could use it, but not with a large heap, and now it is completely open. You can do whatever you like with it. And if I tell that, then they say, okay, interesting choice, because from technological perspective is really one of the leading servers, I would say, is a lean one and fast startups. And another question, what is the one of the most interesting applications of OpenLiberty you ever saw? Something like OpenLiberty on Mars.
Well, I think one really interesting one that we used, it was a demo done by one of our very early offering managers, but he actually made a Minecraft extension. There's a YouTube video on this. I'll have to search it later. But he made a Minecraft extension where it was actually running a Liberty server inside of Minecraft. And he actually had blocks inside of Minecraft with labels for the different features on them. and he put a switch, like a lever on each block. And that was like, if he flipped the switch in Minecraft, then it would dynamically enable or disable the feature in the Liberty server. And he was actually like, he would like turn on security in Minecraft, and then he would go refresh his web browser, and then it would prompt him for like a user login.
This is actually fantastic. It's actually great use case. And what I always wanted to do, and I think it started in the early JBoss, so it's before Whitefly. So I think it was 2006 or 7. And the whole 3D stuff started. And my idea was, so I have a younger brother, and my brother did some 3D work with Java and really enjoyed that. And he at one point of time, he created like a virtual Earth, but it's really like 10 years ago, a virtual Earth, and you can drive in a vehicle on a moon-like structure. And I said, this is actually great. And it created its own API, could manipulate objects. And I think, okay, this was before Minecraft. But the idea was, it's like what we could actually do is we could visualize the application server. So we can walk in, back then there was no wars, there were ears. So you could actually walk into an ear and then see all the modules. And then I could hit the module and see, for instance, the metrics. So we always interested me is monitoring how healthy a module is. And this monitoring stuff was always exposed from the application server. So we could actually go, so like a 3D admin console for the application server.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
I think
I never had time to do this, but I'm glad that your manager did it, because Minecraft is even easier, I think, because you get the environment for free. So I didn't have to bother my brother to implement something for me. So now I could use Minecraft. So it's actually brilliant.
Yeah, so that was a very interesting way to do it. I haven't seen anything else come off of that. I think that YouTube video went out in it was like really early on. It was like 2012 or 2013, I want to say. But yeah, like anything that helps people visualize what's going on inside their environments is super helpful. So like your Prometheus dashboards and stuff that are showing you, metrics or whatever. If we just can put our eyes on the data or what's going on, it becomes, like as humans, it becomes very obvious like where problems are and where the low hanging fruit is to make things more efficient. So like if you could like visualize your war and see like, oh, this library is accounting for 50% of my application footprint, but I only use it for like 2 lines of code that I could write myself, then that's a good candidate for removing.
Yeah. At the next idea, a little bit easier to implement, but still need time. There's like Oculus Go, I think it's called, 3D goggles, and they're I think $200 or something like this. Those are the cheaper ones. There's a standalone, and what you can do, you get the 3D Firefox inside of that, and the 3D Firefox you can actually implement a 3D world with web components. And this was also the idea, as like, okay, let's hack some web components and provide, a 3D admin console to the application servers. Also, should be actually easy to visualize things, but it's a problem is, you start with something like this, you will spend probably millions of hours and no one cares at the end. But it's a really, really interesting use case. So this is if you find the video, please send me the link. I will put it to the show notes. It's so what seems to me, the new IBM is like people really having fun with the enterprise stuff. So it is like great news, right?
Yeah, I really enjoy the direction we're taking. It's looking good.
Cool. If you can tell me this, so what are the next features of OpenLiberty you can share with our audience without getting into trouble?
Well, I can say some of the things that are publicly available, but you just kind of have to know where to look to find them out. We are super active in MicroProfile right now, so like especially like in the reactive space, we're really looking at that and staying up to date and trying to be leaders in the MicroProfile community. Also, another thing that like my team particularly is working on is a function we've had in beta for quite a while, and that's like a user interface for testing database connections and just validating resources in general. So validating like your MQ connections or JDBC or cloud and connections. Just getting like a simple test button for that to see is it good or is it not.
Super valuable, I have to say. I got 2 questions today at the AHEX from attendees: how to validate or how to test database connection. Exactly the question. And in projects, we from time to time always had trouble with connection pools where we had stale physical connections. So like on the next request, we got a problem because the logical connection looked good, but the underlying connection was broken, and we always build something. But this is actually a really useful feature.
Yeah, and actually we've had Liberty started out in the JMX days, like as far as monitoring goes, we did monitoring through MBeans. Mm-hmm. And so we had a lot of MBeans in the runtime, and then it kind of turned out that people weren't really using MBeans that much. And then MicroProfile metrics came along, and one interesting thing we did is we actually came up with a mechanism to automatically expose all MBeans as REST endpoints, and we also can expose our MBean data, the MBean data, as MicroProfile metrics data as well. So especially like for your database connection analytics, if you just turn on MP metrics and hook it into Prometheus, you should get some nice analytics there.
Super useful, and this is very similar also what Payara is doing. But this feature is very useful that you can also expose internal server behavior or metrics to the outside world. On that note, does WebSphere also have? OpenLiberty also have like a incoming request queue. So if you have, for instance, JAX-RS request, usually the request is parsed, put to the queue, and then processed by a thread pool. So there's also a queue between, right?
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, we have. We're doing some work on concurrency right now. So we have actually MicroProfile concurrency is a spec that I'm directly involved in. And there we're looking at sort of extending the Java EE concurrency programming model with the eventual hope that we roll that back into Java EE concurrency someday. But basically you can create manage executors that have custom constraints. So you can say, I want this manage executor to, at most run 5 items concurrently, and say, don't ever let the backlog get more than 10 items. And if it gets more than 10 items, then just start rejecting the work outright, kind of as like a bulkhead approach. Yeah. And I think we actually use it as our bulkhead implementation.
Very useful. This is, I don't know whether you saw my Porcupine library, very old one, where I implemented that on top of Managed Executor Service. You saw that?
No, I haven't seen that.
If you go to my GitHub account and try to find Porcupine, and this Porcupine is another word for Hystrix, right? And back then I got lots of questions about Hystrix on Java EE. Hystrix is dead, but back then it was hot. And I say, actually, you don't need Hystrix because with Java EE, there you can have a bulkheads very easy. And this is what you mentioned right now. I implemented on top of not Managed Executor Service, rather than, it's called, I think, Managed Threads. And I use the Managed Threads with Executor Service and CDI and expose some metrics. But now I don't use the library anymore very often because we have MicroProfile. But my question was not regarding MP concurrency, rather than OpenLiberty implementation. So what usually the application server have is if you access a servlet, let's say, then what the application servers are doing, they are putting the request first into internal queue, which is not exposed to developers, and then they are processing the requests with a thread pool. And my question was, does the OpenLiberties also have such a incoming queue, whether you know that? So what I know is the WebLogic, Whitefly is something like a auto-managed queue. Payara, the queue is directly visible, and WebSphere had at least a monitoring. So the WebSphere traditional or classic had a way to monitor the incoming request. Do you have an idea whether OpenLiberty has also such a queue?
I'm sure we have a queue somewhere in the implementation. I haven't been involved directly with the web container code, but just to give you an idea of how Liberty handles async stuff under the covers, all of the Liberty runtime runs on one thread pool, and that thread pool gets dynamically scaled based on some algorithm that we implemented, where it will basically test, does adding one more thread to the thread pool get me more throughput or not? So it will dynamically grow and shrink the global thread pool as needed.
Perfect.
And as for web container on its own, I believe there's a configuration element where you can limit the number of incoming requests or perhaps a request queue, but I just don't know that off the top of my head.
No problem. But this what you described right now is exactly what Wi-Fi is also doing. And why I'm asking is because if we would expose exactly this queue via matrix, then what you will get, you will see whether the server is overloaded or not. So because if you have a metric and they say the queue is deeper and deeper, or there are more and more requests in the queue, you will know in one point of time the server will break, and this would be interesting resource to expose via metrics. This is why I'm asking.
Yeah, definitely. I know. So setting aside whether or not Liberty has something for that out of the box, you could pretty easily implement it on your own using MicroProfile metrics, particularly if you have a JAX-RS resource method, right? So like if you put, at counted or at timed on your JAX-RS request, you can put it either the method or the class level, I believe. And that will give you your metric data that way. And then if you want to limit it so you're not, flooding your request queue, or at least if it is flooded, give people a quick response that says, sorry, I'm flooded, I can't access your request, and just reject it outright, then you can use the bulkhead annotations for that.
Sure. It was just if there were a queue before my JAX-RS resource, then it is really good to know how deep the queue is. Otherwise, it has an impact on latency. And this you could expose such a queue to metrics, and then with Prometheus, you can even predict when the server will break. This is why I'm asking. So it's useful. And the next thing is with the thread pool you mentioned. So the state of the thread pool could be exposed via metrics, right?
Yep, definitely.
So this would be actually also a great use case, to expose the internal thread pool from OpenLiberty via metrics to see what is the current state, how many threads are active, because then it gives you a feedback, how busy the server actually is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm really happy that I'm talking to you about this. You have lots of good ideas on things that could be improved. So for you and for anybody else listening to this, the Liberty team is super active on monitoring both Stack Overflow questions and just our public GitHub issues. If any user requests get raised with like ideas or whatever, we always try to be very prompt about routing those requests and at least giving them some sort of attention or response. Especially usability feedback like metrics is a great thing to let us know about and where we can improve.
Yeah, this is what I can really just confirm. I found a small issue with the OpenAPI and raised an issue on GitHub, and I think within 4 hours I got the first feedback, and then it was rerouted internally, and I think now it's solved. And this is like your responsiveness is really great.
Yep.
So now, where people can find you on the internet, or how people can help you to improve OpenLiberty. So give me some links to your Twitter accounts, GitHubs, and whatever you like.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter, trying to get more active there. Just Andrew_Guibert. That's my last name. On Twitter, and I'm also on GitHub too under Guibert.
Oh, cool.
And I occasionally I'll blog on OpenLiberty.io and usually tweet out those blogs that I write.
Cool. Anything we forgot to mention?
I think we pretty much covered it all.
So perfect. So thank you. And if you like, I would really like to invite you again, and speak about whatever happened with OpenLiberty in 1 year or half a year or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
So thank you.